Hello and welcome to this video on developing composition in the primary school. I hope you will take away some useful information and ideas you can use. I'm Diane and I've been working for Dorset Music Service for over 20 years now. Some of you will recognise me as leaping about in front of your class teaching ukulele or violin, but my other role is in supporting music subject leads and head teachers to plan for and provide a music education for your pupils. The information is mostly based on the new model music curriculum, which gives guidelines and a framework to help you plan for progression from the early years to year 6. To begin with, I'd like to draw on the analogy between art and music. When a child is first given a piece of paper and a crayon, they don't ask what we would like them to draw or create a masterpiece or even anything that's vaguely recognisable. Their first bursts of creativity are random sweeps to see what the paper and crayon do, or maybe even taste like. Following on from those first experiments, children might be encouraged to try colouring in a beautiful flower or an animal. Which colours will they choose? They are surrounded by colours and shapes, and interesting objects, animals and plants in their very visual world. Can they use different colours? Can they stay within the lines? They might join the dots to make a recognisable image and then start to try to copy as someone shows them how to draw something. Eventually, the images gain recognisable status. For some children, this is the best activity of their day and they can't wait to get back to it whenever they get a chance. It's a talent developing and needs every encouragement, space and time to flourish. The young artist begins to use the page as an outpouring of their feelings and emotions. It's a way to express themselves, learn about life and their place in the world. This comes after years of just experimenting, playing and marvelling at the colours and strokes on the page. Imagine if those children were never or rarely given those chances or the materials to experiment with. The parallels with composing music are immediately obvious. Children are surrounded with sound most of the time. Some sounds make them laugh, some make them stare and listen intently, and some make them jiggle and move. During early music making sessions and at home, toys that make sounds, rattles, shakers, bells and toy glockenspiels are hit or shaken randomly and every possible sound made with the voice. Eventually, these sounds are encouraged to become more controlled, the equivalent of keeping within the lines. In order to progress to achieving the goals of the new model music curriculum, children must first be given the chance to handle instruments and learn how to make all the different contrasts of sound that they offer. Through this exploration, they learn to make choices, selecting instruments based on their known tonality or timbre. The realization dawns that their experiments are like real music and they can make decisions to change how it sounds. Again, for some children this is absolutely fascinating and they can't wait to get back to it. Their music is something that completely absorbs them and becomes an important vehicle for self-expression. Early opportunities to just hold the crayon or the beater are crucial, but how do we give children the chances to develop as artists and composers? To begin with, it is probably best to interpret the word composing in primary schools to mean making up. The terms composing and composition feel far too daunting for the experimental stage that the children are still at and will be until the end of secondary school. Most teachers would rather use the terms doodling or improvising. Children should first be taught to listen intently to the sounds around them. A few simple moments running through fallen leaves sounds interesting. Back in the classroom, which instruments could be chosen to recreate the sounds? The difference between improvising and composing is in the recording, drawing or writing down of the ideas that emerge and being able to reproduce the sounds a week later without having to rely on a very good memory. asked to draw what they hear when listening to the sounds of bonfire night, a child might draw the emotions of fun and family along with the excitement of the fireworks. Here there are hearts, bright colours and lots of smiles. When asked to draw the sounds as shapes and lines, this child has used the articulation, length and pitch of the sounds to create the images. There are two distinct parts to the drawing, a blue wiggly line and a range of orange marks. This is an example of a graphic score. The images could be translated into sounds, again, even if they weren't the original sounds from the firework display. Perhaps the next day or the next week, the picture is shared with the class and a range of instruments are ready. The children choose which instruments could play the wiggly line and which ones could play the orange marks. They are given time to experiment with making the sounds on the instruments, and then finally the two lines are played together by a few of the children at the same time. The children could comment on the sounds, make suggestions and choices about which sounds would go together, how loud or soft they should be, and how long or short. This project could easily be adapted for Key Stage 2. The graphic score could be longer and have more parts. Elements of different children's graphic scores could be combined, calling for teamwork to recreate the sounds. Chants could be developed to be short melodies and notated either still in the form of a graphic score or by musical notation. By Year 6, a further development could be for the children to upload a recording of their playing to UStudio on Charanga and maybe add some more sounds. Children could chant phrases based on words on a firework theme and a drone, perhaps, to bring the whole thing together. In 1966, Kathy Barbarian composed her first musical work, Stripsody, for solo voice, an exploration of the onomatopoeic sounds of comic strips. The three lines simply represent high, middle and low sounds rather than a specific pitch. The sounds can start low and move up, or vice versa. Notice that the sounds move along in sections along the page. The whole piece lasts just over 3 minutes, and this is just a short snippet. The new model music curriculum recommends that in Year 1, children should be creating rhythm and pitch patterns for others to copy, as well as finding ways to write them down. Although children are not expected at this stage to be using formal musical notation, an opportunity arises to begin to introduce the linear concept of pitch as high, middle and low. If you've got a ready supply of colourful beanbags and a roll of coloured tape, the idea of representing pitch by where the beanbag sits on above or below a line is fun and immediately accessible. Tape a line on the floor, use a beanbag to represent high, low or middle. Ask the children to move their hands according to where the marker is placed. So if it's above the line, they touch their heads. If it's on the line, they touch their tummies. And if it's below the line, they touch their knees. At the same time, the note could be sung or played on a pitched instrument. So this begins to introduce the idea of pitch notation. To turn this into a composition activity, the children can arrange the beanbags in a different order, moving them around until they're happy with the phrase. And this activity could also be done with whiteboards and counters or papers and pencils, and the finished compositions could then be drawn or photographed so that they could be recalled at a later date. The beanbags could be arranged in a pattern to represent a rhythm. They could be arranged to show the pitch and the rhythm at the same time. This time, both pitch and length of sound is indicated. The Children could plot the sounds in a short clip of music, as in this clip from Finlandia by Sibelius. They could then go on to invent their own long and short sounds, indicating length of notes with long or short lines and dots. If the children are able to work in pairs, one child performs an activity, for example, slowly building a tower with bricks, while the other makes up sounds to go with it. Maybe they would choose to use a mixture of tuned or untuned percussion. The sounds can then be recorded with a simple graphic score. How about this one? This is a child playing with a yo-yo, while another child tries to reproduce the sound on a glockenspiel, or possibly a recorder. By year 2, children might work with a partner to improvise simple question and answer phrases to be sung and played on untuned percussion, creating a musical conversation. Here there are 3 pitches, do, mi, so, or the first, third and fifth degrees of the scale. The children are learning to match syllable to sound and begin to find that some syllable sounds are short and some are long. The need to have a more precise way to write down the music that the children have made up begins to get more necessary as musical knowledge and skills develop. The new model music curriculum suggests a progression for formal notation starting in year 3 with the introduction of crotchets, quavers and minims. By year 6, the expectation is quite ambitious. Remember that the new model music curriculum is just a guide and is non-statutory. If your pupils are not learning to play an instrument with a teacher through formal tuition, it would be difficult to reach a point where all the children in the class had a thorough understanding of time signatures, for example. The important thing is that they are introduced to them. Charanga has a fun and easy to use app called Rhythm Grids to introduce notation and create rhythm patterns. You can find it by clicking on the Freestyle tab on the home page. Instantly understood, the rhythm grid can be slowed, shuffled and turned around. Different levels can be selected for different abilities. When using rhythm grids to introduce the concept of crotchets, quavers and rests, you can choose to see blobs or stick notation. The Z shapes are rests. I think a gap would possibly be easier to see. Or musical notes. There are several backtracks in different musical styles to accompany the rhythms. Children can play the rhythms on percussion instruments or use voices or body percussion. Once the children are ready, they can make up their own rhythms by dragging the different notes from the bottom of the page into the grid. The display is interactive, highlighting the notes as the music moves along, so it's very easy to use. By year 4, children are encouraged to combine rhythmic notation with letter names to create short pentatonic phrases. Using notes that occur in a pentatonic scale is an effective way to experiment with layering sounds or creating texture, as all the notes sound good when played together. There are no dissonances or clashes. Just to clarify what is meant by a pentatonic scale, it is essentially a 5-note scale as opposed to the more familiar major scale, which has 8 notes. The notes in a major scale are numbered from 1 to 8, creating an octave. which begins and ends on the key note. In this case, we're beginning and ending on a C. If you take out number 4 and 7, the notes that are left form a pentatonic scale. The 8th degree of the scale has the same letter name but is an octave higher. It could still be played in a pentatonic scale. This song was made up by a whole class together and is based on one of their class topics. The children thought of sentences on the theme of the skeleton and managed to produce a rhyming 4th line. The children had to work out how the syllables fitted into the rhythm grid by saying the sentences and clapping the beat. They then practiced clapping the rhythm together before playing the whole rhythm on the note C. It was agreed that the rhythm was good, but the melody was a bit dull, all on one note. So they then set about making up melodies to fit the rhythms, a line at a time. They had to end on a C and were restricted to only using 3 notes, C, G and E, which were the open strings on their ukuleles. Finally, a simple bass line and some percussion sounds were added to bring the song together. Another recommendation on the curriculum is to explore developing musical components by creating sound effects to go with a short film. So find a short film with lots of potential for sound effects, such as a cartoon like Snoopy. Play the film without any sound. Divide the film into scenes of about 10 to 20 seconds. Organise the children into groups to create about 10 to 20 seconds of sounds to go with the film, making sure that they have access to a range of different instruments. Practice until everyone is ready, and then put the sequences together to go with the film. Finally, create a graphic score to remember it by. You'll need to allow plenty of time. This might be a project that evolves over 2 or 3 weeks perhaps. To make the film more interesting, consider using short melodies to represent different characters based on their personalities and mood. If you are familiar with using Churanga's UStudio digital audio workstation, there are now several videos to add sound effects to ready to go. Children will learn to create and edit tracks, choose effects, looping, extending and transposing, all useful skills to develop for the ever more digital world of music. I particularly like this Harry Potter video. I'm sure it will be very popular with Key Stage 2. Churanga have also introduced creating music to go with video games. Using an inspiring piece of music as a starting point, the curriculum suggests composing a short piece in ternary form. Ternary form refers to the structure of the piece. It's often called ABA form and likened to a sandwich. A being the bread and B being the cheese. Section A could be a short phrase or it could be a whole verse. Section B could be a chorus or a contrasting phrase, and then section A is repeated. Sing Up has an inspiring composing in ternary form unit by Rachel Leach for Year 5, based on Ravel's Empress of the Pagodas. Ravel describes the simple story of a little girl walking through a Japanese forest. After listening to the music a few times and discussing what they hear, children are encouraged to make up a short phrase using the pentatonic scale to represent the little girl walking into the forest for section A, a contrasting phrase with a different mood to describe a strange encounter for section B, and then a return to the walking theme as the little girl walks back out of the forest at the end. The unit is completed in 3 lessons. It is recommended that chords are introduced in Year 5, both as a composing element and as an accompaniment to melodies that are sung or played on instruments. Children might have had the opportunity to learn a chordal instrument such as the guitar, ukulele or piano, perhaps as a whole class instrumental learning project. Bringing their knowledge of chords to composition work enhances the finished results. A chord in music can be described as 2 or more notes sounding together. Some notes go well together, while others clash or create a dissonance. In Key Stage 2, it is enough for children to understand and use major and minor triads. A major triad uses the 1st, 3rd and 5th degrees of the major scale. The notes can be played one after another, or melodically to sound like ripples on the water, or they can all be played at the same time, or harmonically to create a rich depth of sound. A minor triad uses the same notes, except the 3rd degree of the scale is 1 semitone lower, seen here by the little flat sign in front of the note. The effect is to make a sad sound in contrast to the bright, happy sound of the major triad. As in most aspects of the music curriculum, composing draws on all the elements of music that the children are constantly developing through all their creative activities and exposure to music. This document charts the development of musical knowledge and understanding throughout reception and Key Stage 1. And goes on to show the same things for Key Stage 2. That brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you for watching. Please get in touch if you'd like help with including more composition in your curriculum.